Man, do I have a juicy bombshell update for you guys on a case we've been following. You guys remember the elderly Vietnamese man who was nearly killed by Sergeant Joseph Gibson from the Oklahoma City Police Department? His lawyer, Devin Jacob, who is a genius, by the way, has filed a lawsuit, which he promised to do, but he included the Attorney General of Oklahoma, Drummond, as a named defendant. Let's talk about how he's going to make it stick. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Southern Draw Law. My name is James White, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, former police officer. All right, so just to catch you up to speed, in case you don't know what's going on, here's a quick summary. Sergeant Joseph Gibson, who was an Oklahoma City patrol sergeant, responds to a motor vehicle accident, and he begins to get into some sort of debate with the driver of one of the vehicles, who is 70-some-year-old Lich Vu, a Vietnamese man. Mr. Vu and Sergeant Gibson had some disagreement as to who was at fault, and because there's a bit of a cultural disconnect in the way that young people and old people interact with one another in Asian countries, Mr. Vu lightly tapped Sergeant Gibson on the chest. Sergeant Gibson lost his temper, executed a brutal sweep, throw, armbar, whatever you want to call it, causing Mr. Vu's face and head to crash into the ground. And it literally nearly killed him. That's not an exaggeration. It really did. He had a brain bleed. He spent an extended period of time in the hospital and now is said to be on a permanent cognitive decline as a result of these injuries. Oklahoma City Police Department immediately began their, what we all would probably believe, half-hearted internal investigation as to whether or not there were any policy violations. But the brutality of the attack was so obvious and apparent on its face that the Oklahoma County District Attorney, Vicky Bahena, brought criminal charges against Sergeant Gibson, charging him with aggravated assault and battery of Mr. Vu. So it was obvious that to the district attorney in that area that his response was so disproportionate to what would be reasonable that was actually criminal. Well, lo and behold, after that happens, the newly elected Attorney General for Oklahoma, Drummond, with his eye on a future race for the governor and pandering to the law enforcement unions, who again ran on an anti-corruption platform, took it upon himself to dismiss these criminal charges. And in the process, he made a statement, and the statement is important, so I want to make sure I say it verbatim because it matters. As Attorney General, I will not permit Oklahoma police officers to face criminal prosecution for conduct adhering to their training. Keep in mind that at the time that Drummond had dismissed these charges and had made these statements, it was very early into the investigation, and there still have not been any findings released by the internal investigation. So Drummond essentially tied himself to policymaking for the state of Oklahoma as it relates to law enforcement training, and he assumed that there were no violations of the Oklahoma City Police Department use of force guidelines. Again, maybe he had some insider information, maybe he didn't, we don't know, but that's what he said, and it matters, and I'll explain why in a little bit. Now, a couple weeks back, I actually did an update on this case because Gibson resigned quietly. Nobody even reported anything. We did an update on that saying that the lawsuit was going to be incoming and that Jacob had already given his notice that he was going to sue. And the update was just basically that a couple things had taken place. First and foremost, there was some newly released body cam footage that showed the moments directly after the actual slamming of the ground and Mr. Vu's condition. And one of the things that came out was that Gibson lied to the responding EMTs and told them that Mr. Vu had fallen to the ground. It also became apparent that Gibson and the wife of Mr. Vu were concerned that he had been killed because of the impact that his head had with the ground. Now, the second update that came through our last video was that he was able to quietly resign, which we've already talked about. But the third thing, and the most damning thing I think that came out of it, was that it turns out one of the lawyers who is representing Joseph Gibson, he is the former Attorney General who was the Attorney General before Drummond took office, and he is actually representing Sergeant Gibson. Now, isn't that weird? That means that either Gibson has hired him privately or he works with the law enforcement union or the FOP or something. So something here stinks, right? I mean, that's pretty obvious. Now, that brings us up to speed. We knew there was a lawsuit coming because Devin Jacob told us it was. And in the process of making that statement in our last video, he made the statement that Mr. Gibson would not be the only defendant. And I thought that he was talking about Oklahoma City PD, which he was. But he was also making a veiled assertion about what he was going to do next, and this totally caught me off guard. He has used the Monell theory to include the elected Attorney General of Oklahoma, Drummond, as a de facto policymaker to add him as a named defendant in this lawsuit, and it's absolutely brilliant. We're going to walk through some of the legal aspects of it, but he might get an opportunity to depose this guy, and it's going to be a freaking field day. But without further ado, let's head out to KFOR News and check out the latest update so we can get you up to speed, and we'll come back and talk about the Monell stuff.
New reaction to a federal lawsuit filed by the family of an elderly man taken to the ground during a traffic stop.
Might remember it happened back in October and quickly made national and international headlines. 71-year-old Lich Vu suffered a brain bleed and was knocked unconscious when a now former officer took him to the ground after Vu tapped on the officer's chest and told him to shut up. As we've told you, Vu's family intended to sue.
Now that lawsuit has officially been filed against the former officer, Oklahoma City, and Oklahoma's Attorney General. News 4's John Hayes spoke with Vu's attorney today, and John, he says taxpayers need to pay attention to this case.
That's right, Jolene. The lawsuit does ask for compensation, which could hurt taxpayers if the city isn't prepared for a potential loss. Meantime, Attorney General Drummond and one of the former officer's attorneys are standing by him.
Your vehicle is not like that.
Sit down.
No.
You sit down.
This body camera video from an October traffic stop in Oklahoma City, now at the center of a federal lawsuit.
Mr. Gibson broke Mr. Vu is what he did, and he broke that family.
Devin M. Jacob filed the lawsuit Monday on behalf of his client, 71-year-old Lich Vu, and his family. Former Oklahoma City Police Sergeant Joseph Gibson caught on camera slamming Vu to the ground after Vu told him to shut up and tapped his vest with the back of his wrist. Gibson told a paramedic this.
I grabbed a hold of him, he fell.
Vu suffered a brain bleed, broken bones, and the lawsuit says he's now experiencing a permanent cognitive decline. Toon Nguyen, president of the Vietnamese American Heritage Community of Oklahoma, has kept in touch with Vu's family.
Once something is broken, it's hard to piece together the pieces.
Oklahoma County District Attorney Vicky Behenna filed felony assault charges. Attorney General Drummond later dropped them, saying Gibson acted within the scope of his training. Vu's legal team is now seeking civil justice through a jury trial. The first two defendants, Gibson, who I was the first to report resigned last month, and the city of Oklahoma City.
I give the city credit. They're taking steps in the right direction, but steps alone is not a solution.
Drummond is the third.
If he was taught to do this, essentially assault elderly persons who are not presenting as a credible threat, and Mr. Drummond's in charge of the training, then essentially Mr. Drummond is a de facto policymaker for the city and the police department on this issue.
The city won't comment on pending litigation. The AG's office told me, quote, the Attorney General has been clear that no one has the right to make unwanted physical contact with our police officers. He will always stand with law enforcement when they are performing lawful duties.
I look forward to questioning him about it under oath during his deposition.
Gibson's attorney going one step further, writing, quote, this lawsuit completely distorts the facts surrounding the incident. Sergeant Gibson reacted to a confrontational and belligerent individual consistent with his training. I'm confident the federal court will validate that.
They can say what they want, but the police department's own use of force experts said it's too much.
The big ask here, including the jury trial, an oral and written apology, as well as monetary damages. But what does that mean for the city and taxpayer dollars if money hasn't been set aside for a potential loss?
There's different avenues and mechanisms that sometimes come into play here that relieve the burden.
If that doesn't happen in this case, Jacob has harsh advice.
Maybe get better leaders in place, more qualified persons in place who can actually govern correctly.
Now, no court dates have been scheduled yet. Gibson, the city, and AG will have 60 days to file their responses after they've been served or waive that serving. From there, they'll be able to file an answer to, admit or deny the allegations in the lawsuit, or even file a motion to dismiss it outright.
All right, so you might be thinking, well, how on earth can he include the Attorney General. And that's because the Attorney General, stupidly, because he wants to run for governor and he wants to pander, came out and essentially gave a statement that looked like a sweeping policy. And again, I'll remind you of his statement. As the Attorney General, okay, I'm the head law enforcement officer in the state of Oklahoma. I will not permit Oklahoma police officers to face criminal prosecution for conduct adhering to their training. That is a sweeping policy. That is not a prosecutorial decision. Drummond did not investigate this case, at least not publicly, at least not in a way that would shed any light on what the internal findings of the investigation at Oklahoma City PD were. He didn't leave this to an independent agency. He didn't review the case facts like a prosecutor would to figure out whether there was merit to it. So let's talk about what you actually need in order to trigger a Monell claim. So number one, you have to have the basis for a 1983 claim, which means you have to have an act under a color of law and you have to have a deprivation of some civil right. Okay, so we have that. We know that because we got an act under the color of law where Joseph Gibson is in uniform responding to a motor vehicle accident. And we have what we believe is a deprivation of a civil right because of excessive force under the Fourth Amendment. So you hold liable for that depends on what their roles were. So obviously Joseph Gibson individually can be held liable for that, assuming he does not survive qualified immunity. And ostensibly you would be able to add the city of Oklahoma because under Monell, these are what you have to prove. You have to prove that a constitutional violation occurred. That's number one. It's a conjunctive test. You have to prove that it occurred and there's causation or a causal relationship between the thing that happened and an official policy or a widespread custom or practice, a decision by a final policymaker, or failure to train or supervise. And so whenever you're looking at Monell, these are the theories that you can get to causation, right? We know it happened, but it happened because you guys either say it's cool under policy, or even if it's not written down in policy, it's sort of an unspoken customer practice that keeps happening, or some police chief, mayor, attorney general, final policymaker says it's okay, or there was a failure to supervise. Well, the Monell theory under which they are attacking Gittner Drummond, and again, it is genius because this guy is the end-all be-all for law enforcement in the state of Oklahoma. And he came right out and said that what he saw was okay under law enforcement training protocol in the state of Oklahoma. And as long as he's the attorney general, he won't let Oklahoma officers get prosecuted for it. That, my friends, has opened him up, righteously so, to a Monell claim as a theory for the 1983 lawsuit. And Devin Jacob is an absolute genius for attacking him in this way because he's going to be able to, if Gittner Drummond cannot get himself dismissed as a named defendant, and it's going to be difficult for him to do. Now, there's some home cooking in the courts. We all know it. It's possible that he gets some federal judge to exclude him as a defendant under a qualified immunity claim or whatever. It's possible. But if he is not able to get this done at qualified immunity or summary judgment stage and get himself excluded as a defendant, he is going to have to sit for deposition. And it's going to be an absolute blast to see Devin Jacob rip him to shreds and get into his emails and his discussions and all of his backdoor deals that he's doing for governor and the way he's pandering and the corruption. It is going to be beautiful to see. And in closing, I'm so excited about this. I'm almost giddy. Very rarely do lawyers do things besides just get in the media and squawk. This is a smart way for Devin Jacob to say, put up or shut up. You're either going to own this because it was your statement and you are going to stand at the plate and take the pitches because this was your freaking idea. You didn't have to insert yourself into this. She did this for political reasons. You came in and you stole this case from the proper district attorney who was elected to make these decisions. And you used your authority as the chief law enforcement officer in the state to override and circumvent her authority. And in the process, you came out and you made this stupid statement. So we're going to find out what the sincerity level of that statement is. You either are the policymaker who said this is okay and pursuant to training in the state of Oklahoma. As such, you are a proper defendant in this lawsuit. Or B, you were just talking out of your ass. You made a mistake and now you need to beg the courts for mercy. But just to leave you with one last little bit of fun, because I don't want to drag this out forever. You guys get the gist of what I'm trying to do. I asked ChatGPT if it could eloquently describe a particular physiological thing that I believe is happening inside of Gittner Drummond right now. So let me walk you through what I asked it to do. I said, ChatGPT, eloquently describe the way The individual sphincter muscles in Gentner Drummond's asshole must be losing their will to fight with the way he must have puckered up when he got served as a defendant in this lawsuit. And ChatGPT, having never let me down before, said the following, and I quote, "All right, let's ride the line between eloquence and absolute savagery." And this is how ChatGPT described Gentner Drummond's butthole. One can only imagine the symphony of surrender playing out in the hidden corridors of Gentner Drummond's posterior anatomy. The once confident battalion of sphincter muscles, brave and proud, now trembling at the first tremor of legal consequence, as the federal summons arrived like a flaming arrow through the gates of his perceived invincibility. A sudden and involuntary clench gripped him, a puckering so severe it could have compressed coal into diamonds. In that moment, Drummond didn't just tighten up. No, he folded inward, every fiber of denial in his body conceding to a singular physiological truth: accountability was no longer theoretical. And that, my friends, is all I have for you today. Hope you got something out of it. Just wanted to draw your attention to the brilliance of Devin Jacob in this lawsuit. I'd like to invite you over to Substack to check out our Substack community, where we talk about some stuff that we don't talk about here. It's absolutely free to join, though you can join a paid tier if you'd like to. If you do not want to go to Substack, but you would like to support the Southern Draw Law channel monetarily, leave my Venmo and PayPal links both here on the screen as well as in the description. Please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment on the video. Check out some of the other videos on the channel and leave a comment on there as well. Until I see you again, take care. Always film your interactions with the police and keep your evidence to yourself.